Now, we've previously mentioned that newspapers have really struggled over the past 10 or 20 years with declining readerships, declining advertising revenues, calling into question what future large newspapers have in our society today. But I think this section in particular is useful for putting these struggles in a broader context. And that what we see is that declining readership is nothing new for daily newspapers, and that really throughout the past 100 years or so, we see a trend toward declines in readership for newspapers. That way back in the Great Depression in the 1930s, there were declines in readers for newspapers because people gravitated to radio and increasingly got their news and information for free from that new medium. And then, again, in the 60s and 1970s, newspaper publishing experienced more declines as many people shifted from reading newspapers to watching TV, watching TV news programs, and also reading weekly news magazines like Time and Newsweek. So this drop-off on readership in the 2000s as a result of the development of the internet is simply an acceleration of this longer-term trend. Now, also, what I think is really intriguing about this section is that the authors point out that this decline in national readership of newspapers is not necessarily inevitable. That it isn't just inevitable that, with the internet, newspapers are toast, they're dead meat. The authors point out that in many other countries, oddly enough, newspapers are on the rise. That countries in Latin America, Asia, have experienced increases in readership of their newspapers. And then there's also the intriguing case of Germany. That Germany is, like the U.S., an advanced, industrialized Western society. But newspapers in Germany are doing quite well. So that raises the big question, what's up with newspapers in the U.S. and why is it that newspapers in America have had such a rough go of it when newspapers in other countries are, doing so well? And I think this is an open question for us. One explanation is that we in the U.S. were just kind of ahead of the curve when it came to the development of online media and the internet. According to this line of thought, things might be great for newspapers in Germany and Latin American countries, but watch out as people gravitate towards the internet and online media over time in those countries as well. They will move away from newspapers. So maybe that's part of it. But the authors also suggest that there tends to be more of a commitment to local ownership of newspapers and more of a long-held commitment to the people in local communities in newspapers in other countries, and that might be one reason why newspapers in other countries have been more successful in surviving. According to this logic, the argument is that newspapers in the U.S. Were increasingly owned by newspaper chains like Gannett that had headquarters like maybe 2,000 miles from where the newspaper was operated, had no real commitment to the local community, and that as newspapers were sold off to outside companies, there too the company had no real investment in terms of providing quality news coverage for a local community. So there may be other reasons as well, but it's interesting to think about what accounts for the difference in the U.S. The fortunes of U.S. newspapers versus papers in other countries. So we've primarily been talking about how the internet and newer media have provided this major challenge for newspapers. But I think we also need to acknowledge the benefits of the internet for newspapers and how many newspapers have really taken great advantage of the internet to improve their news coverage. Now, one of the things that printed newspapers always had to deal with was limited space. You only had so many pages in the newspaper. Well, in contrast, the internet has obviously unlimited space, which provides newspapers with an ability to provide much more extensive, comprehensive coverage of news and current events. Also, another big advantage over the old-style printed newspaper that would come out once a day is that with online operations, a newspaper can post updates for news and events immediately, anytime, day or night. And also, newspapers are taking advantage of the internet by having lots of related material, so that in their stories, newspapers will have links to video and publications and data provided by other organizations or other companies. And related to that, newspapers can make use of the internet's multimedia capabilities so that the New York Times, for instance, will not just post a story about an upcoming hurricane, but it will also post video, audio, interviews with journalists, with low-quality digital video, and so forth. And in fact, journalists today are being trained to cover stories in a more multimedia approach. So journalists and reporters are learning to not just write a story to post on the site, but to also produce and edit video and incorporate lots of useful links for readers. Now, as we've said, a lot of these newspapers have increasingly shifted towards online operations as they're finding that their printed publications are becoming much less profitable. But the big question for newspapers and news organizations is how to make money off this thing. Newspapers are really struggling with trying to find a way to generate sufficient revenue for their online operations. The thing is that people like you and me became very accustomed to not paying anything for access to news or information online. I mean, obviously, that posed a major problem for newspapers because how are they going to make their money online if nobody's willing to pay for access to their news and opinion and information? Now, it is so that some newspapers have incorporated a paywall, established a paywall that charges people access to their site. And some newspapers have been pretty successful in doing this. The Wall Street Journal was an early adopter of a paywall. More recently, the New York Times has established a paywall for subscribers that want unlimited access to their news and information. And we're seeing more newspapers move in this direction. But again, the question is whether or not news organizations made a fundamental mistake about 10 years ago by initially providing free access to their news and information online. Have we as Americans been so socialized to getting free information online that we'll be reluctant or unwilling to pay for it? I mean, what do you think about this? I mean, do you pay a subscription online for access to a newspaper? I actually myself broke down and finally got an online subscription to the New York Times. Do you guys do the same, or are you committed to simply getting all of your news for free? Something we can talk about.